So I thank you for the opportunity tonight to address you and look forward to working with everyone.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Welcome on board.
Welcome aboard, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking the job.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Yep. Thanks, guys.
Any other public comment? Hang on.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I just want to make an announcement that I will not be a candidate for re-election in this year's election, so papers are available as of this past Monday, and anyone in the community that is interested should consider filling the seat. Thank you.
We'll hold your eulogy at a later date.
Yes, we'll hold the eulogy later.
I do have a note from the Council of Aging that they asked me to share during public comment. Mass Development, in partnership with the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, has awarded the Clinton Council on Aging funding in the amount of $15,600 through the Taxi, Livery, and Hackney Transportation Partnership Grant Program. This grant will be used to provide Clinton seniors with transportation to non-emergency medical appointments and to facilitate delivery of essential supplies such as food and medicine to residents in need. The Clinton Council on Aging has partnered with Clinton Livery, Inc. to provide these services to Clinton seniors at no charge to the senior. Currently, the Clinton Senior Center operates 2 vans for the transportation needs through the Worcester Regional Transit Authority. This grant will be servicing the unmet needs. We are very excited to be able to offer these additional services to our Clinton seniors. This grant will enable us to bring Clinton seniors to towns not currently served by the WRTA. Any senior who is in need of transportation should contact the Clinton Senior Center by calling the dispatcher. The number is 978-733-4747, extension 309. 48-hour advance notice is required. We would like to extend our gratitude to Clinton Livery for partnering with the Clinton Council on Aging to provide this much-needed service to our senior residents. Seeing no other public comment, we'll move on to the review of minutes for March 3rd, 2021. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the minutes as presented.
I'll second that motion.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all is in favor? Aye. Opposed? 5-0. As anyone who's been paying attention the past couple of weeks knows, Gordon Langton passed away since our last meeting. As I told the item, if he was simply a captain of industry who founded and nurtured our largest employer for so many years, or if he was a philanthropist who donated money to businesses in need, or school programs such as the U.S. First STEP program before many of us knew what STEP was, or if he was a cultural ambassador who founded one of the finest museums in the state. If he was any one of those 3 things, he'd be considered one of the great Clintonians of my lifetime. But the fact that he was all 3 means we have lost one of the great Clintonians of all time. So as I tell my children, when someone extraordinary passes from this earth, we are all burdened to make up the difference. It's clear we have a lot of work to do with Gordon gone. Beyond that, anyone who I've talked to the past couple of weeks says that in addition to his generosity, not only through time and resources, his kindness was the thing that really set him apart. Whenever you talk to him, you come away feeling better about yourself, about Clinton, about life. So we are a lesser town today without him, but we're all better off because of him. My initial hope was to honor him on his birthday, April 24th, with possibly a dedication of the corner of High and Union Street. I was informed today that current and former NIPRO employees are also planning an effort. So what I would like to do is table this until we can join forces and make sure we're all on the same page, if there's no objection from the board. We still have a couple meetings before that day. But, excuse me, I would just like to make sure that we all give him the honor he is due. So if that's okay, we'll table that.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Moving on. We will continue the utility pole installation hearing for Catherine Street. Is there anyone from National Grid here? Thank you. Could you state your name and address for the record, please?
Yes, hi. My name is Steve Susi, for a designer for National Grid to present the pole petition. The petition is to relocate pole 1 really on Catherine Street for per customer request at 128 rear Greeley Street. The customer who is here, Ben Kloklowski, hopefully I pronounced that right. He is building a new building, and he requested us to relocate, pole 1 across to the street because it would interfere with his building his new residence at that address.
Yeah, basically it's like 3 feet from the exterior wall. So when I start pulling that building down, more than likely that pole will topple over.
Any questions from the board?
Mr. Chairman, if I may?
Please.
This is for National Grid. If the pole were relocated, would there be guy wires similar to the ones on the existing pole? Or would the pole be freestanding?
No, pole 1 would then be in line with the rest of the poles on Catherine Street, so there'd be no back guy on that. We would have to substitute that guy wire, which is going through an existing tree. It's like in a Y shape, and that could cause problems. But they would remove that and the guy wires from the existing and anchors for the existing pole 1, and then we'd put a new pole, anchor and guy for the pole at the corner of Catherine Street and Greeley Street, because there's a tap going across, the road there. So it'd be a sidewalk anchor and guy for pole 10-50, which would support the line going across Flag Street.
But not at the new pole. This is at a...
No, not at the new
This is
pole.
at an existing pole.
Yeah, that new pole, relocating it would be across the street and it would be in line with, pole 11 Greeley Street, pole 2, and pole 3 Catherine Street. So everything would be in a line.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, another question to the applicant.
Sure.
Does the pole in its location now prohibit you from building on your property?
Yeah, because the lines that are going across, it would be hard for me to get them.
And the
Yeah,
guy
yeah.
wires, the guy lines on that pole on your property?
I don't believe so.
There's 2 of them.
Well, there's a guy wire that would be in secondary wire, that would be in the street right away. And then at least one of the dead end anchors would be, that could be in the street right away. It might go a little bit over into the property.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Can Matt go first?
Oh, sorry.
I heard him
Go
first.
ahead.
So you had mentioned initially that removal of the structure that's there would require the pole to be moved.
That's correct.
And then you had also mentioned, based in response to the question that you were asked, that in order to build there, the pole would also need to be removed. Have you received approval to build the structure on that property?
So it got reverted from commercial to residential, so I can get a building permit as long as I stay on the same.
So it does not require a variance or
No,
an
I
approval?
actually have an email from the ZBA stating that. If you-
Please. Thank you.
So basically at the bottom here, construct residential problem equals smaller footprint. As they propose, looks like we can go forward without coming back to ZBA.
Okay.
Would you guys like a copy?
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure. It's over there. Thank you.
I'm sorry. If he has a copy, sure.
You don't need it, I'll take it for the file.
You can have mine if you want. Ed?
How recently did you purchase the property?
A couple of years ago now.
And were you aware of the possible complications from the pole in its current location when you were in the process of purchasing the property?
I wasn't really sure what I was going to do with the property, so
Okay.
it wasn't really a problem at first. And
Okay.
then basically realized that now that I can reconstruct a building on the existing lot, or I mean existing footprint, now it poses a problem.
So the root cause or the main reason of the problem is if you're afraid if you tear down that building, it's too close to the pole.
Yes,
And-
exactly.
okay.
And I mean, again, too, trying to get a machine in there, the wires are so low, it's hard
Right.
to get to that building. And then as I take the building down to put a new foundation in, like I said, disturbing the soil, it's only about 3 feet away from that exterior wall that's coming down. I just have a fear that pole will go over.
In the new building that you're going to put up is going to go in the same location?
Yes, yeah, it has to stay on the same footprint.
Okay.
Mr. Covas?
So based upon this, this email from the chair of the zoning board of appeals, so there seems to be, based upon what you're saying, is the property hasn't been used commercially for 2 years, but Mr. McGinn is unsure how the town would confirm that claim. So based upon the reconstruction after demolition, that would be predicated upon confirmation that it has not been used
Yeah,
commercially.
I've just been using it as storage. It's an unconditioned. Haven't done.
Is there a way that, can we speak to Mr. Baird about the assessed, whatever the coding of the property is, if it is commercial or if it is residential?
It says on if you flip it over, I have the GIS thing. I think it's in the top right corner. It says that it's been. I think it was like on February 7th, 2020, I think it was changed.
So in the top right corner, current assessment, commercial code 3160, commercial land 3160.
Back here.
Mr. Chairman, if I may?
Please. Please.
My interpretation of the letter from the ZBA is that they have no evidence that it's been used commercially in the past 2 years, and it was zoned, it was a, I don't know, what's the terminology, pre-existing non-conforming use. But if that use was not being utilized, it automatically becomes residential, and it can't go back to commercial. So it's, the way I read this opinion is that they are deferring for lack of any evidence that it was commercial, and they're waiving their responsibility or their requirement of getting a variance because they're determining that it's residential use for the past 2 years.
Thank you.
See, I don't see that interpretation because it's saying the property is residential one if the owner has stated it has not been used commercially for 2 years. I'm not sure how the town would confirm this claim. So I don't see that as being a definitive opinion.
It hasn't been used in the past several years for commercial.
But it's currently assessed as commercial. So they're paying
They're paying
commercial
commercial
rate on
tax,
it.
yeah?
So as far as, that's where I was asking.
But they're getting rid of a piece of commercial property in the middle of a residential area. You would think the neighbors should be happy, but whatever.
Any other questions?
Not really a question, but I think, not to speak for Selectman Cobus, but I would just imagine that there would have to be some sort of a process to get something rezoned more than just the owner saying, I don't use it for commercial purposes. I might be wrong, but I just would figure that would have to be something that, some sort of a,
It's automatic, automatic. If it hasn't been used in 2 years for commercial, right back to residential. This is in a residential area.
I'd have to go and get the use and tell you guys what I was doing out of there if I was using it as a commercial property.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So I mean,
Yeah.
that being said, seeing I've owned the building for a couple of years now, I haven't done anything out of there except store a motorcycle and a couple other things in there.
So the burden of proof is to prove that you are commercial, is the way I'm understanding this. The default is that, okay, that it reverts to residential, okay.
If I can address that again, Mr. Chairman, it says, assuming the claim is true, and there's no claim to the contrary that I've heard, Section 3670 provides for reconstruction after demolition, and as long as the applicant for the building permit constructs a residential property on an equal or smaller footprint as they have proposed, it looks like they can go forward without coming before the ZBA. This is the ZBA notification to the building inspector, who is the permitting authority. They're saying that they have no knowledge to the contrary that it was used as a commercial property in the last 2 years. So they're saying, I would argue, if I were the applicant, they're refusing to consider a variance because one's not needed.
Right.
So, unless somebody's out there contesting the use of the property and has evidence that it was used commercially, I don't see how you can hold someone to a higher standard than the fact that they're telling you they've owned it and they haven't used it commercially.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure why, Mr. Barrett? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bear.
I think the issues that came up at the earlier part of this hearing are more of a public safety issue than dispute over how the property is going to be used. Frankly, I'm not worried about the property at all. I'm more worried about moving that pole and making a narrow street even more narrow. So, are there any other questions? Comments? Motion? What's the pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the pole relocation, and I'll explain my reasoning if there's a second.
I'll second that motion.
Motion made and seconded. Mr. Ward?
Just, Mr. Chairman, I think at the last meeting, the board had kept the hearing open in the event that, new residents or butters or new information was presented. So I think that, before the board votes,
Sure.
it maybe should ask if there's any public input on this.
Thank you. My apologies. Is there anyone here to speak in favor of the petition? Hearing none, is there anyone here to speak in opposition who didn't speak last time? Please come forward. Could you guys just give a little space? If you spoke last time, you're in the record, so we're all set, but could you come up to the microphone? Could you come to the microphone, please? Could you come to the microphone, please? I'm sorry, I just can't hear you, I'm sorry.
When you went before the zoning board, that was back in January of last year, and he fell under the 3660 law in the state because the building had been not used. Now, what you are speaking about, this paper that he passed around, that was an informal meeting that they had. I mean, informal meeting that none of the abutters or the neighbors are invited to. After we had had the previous one in January, and we had a letter from a lawyer. Were you people, did you receive that letter? See what it contained, Michael?
Yeah,
Yeah, it was in the packet.
Presented to the board members.
And also, we have had the neighbors and other people that have emailed you with the oppositions of this.
Right, and that's all on the record.
Now, and also the pole, he had an excavator in there and did a parking lot. He took down trees, which were right here next to the pole, and he was in a bucket and swinging from the bucket truck, cutting all the trees down. The pole wasn't in the way. And then he had the excavator come in and bring in gravel and big stones. The pole wasn't in the way then either. And right now, if he's going to be changing his address to Catherine Street, he has approximately 2 feet, which is behind his building. And he should have a 25-foot frontage, which
Okay, well,
means that he's got to go back this way.
That's more for the zoning board, though. Right, we're
So-
talking about the pole, so,
And the pole would be detrimental, especially to the 3 families that have to come in and out of that driveway. As it is now, when he comes up or his father comes up, they back up into her driveway. And so with the snow, it's going to narrow the road even more. The road is narrow. And so it would be detrimental to everybody. And we've all been there. And we're going to do this and so we can flip a house and leave everybody else that lives there to take care of everything. I don't think it's fair.
could you state your name and address for the record, just so we have it for the minutes?
Barbara D'Antonis, 2 Catherine Street.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else to speak in opposition? Hold on one second. Is there anyone else to speak in opposition? Go ahead.
Just to be clear about the new pole isn't going to narrow the street at all. It is going to be 3 feet away from the pavement edge in line with the other poles. So it's not going to be further into the road, it's going to be on the sidewalk area. It's going to be 2 or 3 feet from the driveway edge, which is, plenty of room to get around that. Plenty of poles are within 3 feet of a driveway. So that would be your decision, but it's not going to narrow the road in any sense. It will be put off the edge, and we could even put it even more, a couple of feet even further from the driveway edge if that's necessary.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes?
with respect to, we had this at the last meeting, and National Grid was able to attend, and people in opposition showed up. So I'm just asking if people showed up, even if they did speak at last meeting's, our last Selectmen's meeting, I would ask the board what the pleasure of the board is, but I would think we should allow them, even if they're...
Well, it's all on the record. The hearing didn't end, so...
Yeah, but I don't think it's, speaking to this the same day as the other side is here, I think has some value. I don't think they should be penalized because they showed up at the last meeting and National Grid didn't, so they talked last week and now they don't get to talk this week. I'm just saying, I have no issue if there's 1 or 2 people here, even if they spoke at the last Selectmen's meeting, I would have no, I don't know why we would be opposed to letting them speak again and state the same thing.
No, we were all here, we all heard it. National Grid doesn't get to decide.
Yeah. I'm just saying I would like to hear it again. You don't have to grant my request.
Sure, if
it's
there's
fine.
anyone else who'd like to speak in opposition, please come forward. State your name and address, please.
Denise Camacho, 128 Greeley. I guess what I'm confused by with his letter, the pole business too, but I don't understand how he's saying he can build on the same footprint when we hired a lawyer who said he can't. He has to notify everybody and go through the ZBA yet again.
And again, that's for the ZBA and not for us.
Correct, but
I apologize. I understand your frustration. We're just here to talk about the pole. So what he does with the property is no business of mine. It's a ZBA thing.
Right. I guess
So-
just moving the pole to upset a whole neighborhood for something he may or may not be able to do.
Well, I tend to agree
is
with you,
what
but
it is, so,
yeah, you could make that argument, sure.
all right.
But yeah, this letter, I don't know, it doesn't have much to do with
Yeah.
my vote.
And the snow too, where he don't live on the street, but the snow is gonna go, it always goes over where that pole is. Where the pole is going now, there is gonna be a problem with the snow. We know, we live there, but anyway, all right.
Thank you.
That's it for me, thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Please.
This question can be, I guess, open to anyone who wants to answer it. It seems this new location proposal is not popular with the residents of that street. I'm just curious, and this is probably more a question for National Grid. Have any efforts been made? Is there another location where this pole could go that wouldn't be as disruptive to that street? Is that a possibility, or does it have to go there?
On here. We would like to, of course, put all our poles in line. That's something that we would like. So that does that, and it prevents us from having to guy. Depending on where that is or where the lot line is, and we would also just like to have one secondary line and still two secondary lines going down the street, or two pole lines. So depending on where the new building is, where that location of pole 1 is, we can hit a new service line from anywhere on that frontage according to the map. So until, from that location of pole 1, no matter what, we're not going to cross over someone else's, and we'll be able to hit it somewhere in front of the building. If we leave it on the side of that, I don't know the plans of where the new building is, but it will interfere, it'll be close to it. Like you said, there'll be, for him, for putting a driveway, there might be an issue. I don't know how that's going to go until the whole building is constructed. Then I can say, oh, wait a minute, we can't put it here, we have to put it back because there's windows, and we need to be 3 feet away from the windows if it's overhead or something like that.
But is the applicant looking for the pole to be removed before he demolishes the building?
Yes, he's looking to have that removed.
But he knows, you know where you're going to put the new building, right?
I need to stay on the same footprint.
Right. So, I mean, we know where the new building's going to go.
So again,
Go ahead and sit down, just so we can hear you.
sorry about that. The pole is definitely in the way, and again, taking that building down to reconstruct a new building, the pole's going to fall over.
Yeah. So I guess and not to repeat the question, but has National Grid made any effort to find an alternate location for this pole with the residents of the street?
The only other spot that I could propose, if it's a problem moving across the street, it can go to the very further down Catherine Street on my property, just the way, again, I just don't want to blow the pole over. So if it could go there, I just think the span is too far, you know what I mean, from the wires.
I don't mean to oversimplify this, but you want to move a pole, I get it. The people that live there aren't happy with the proposed location. So my question is just, has any effort been made to find a location that would suit everyone?
I don't believe so. When I met National Grid there to begin with, it didn't, the guy that I met it didn't seem like it could go anywhere else really. But again, to answer your question, I don't think
and I appreciate your comments, but I believe the gentleman from National Grid can probably answer that.
Again, when we do overhead wires or anywhere, until the building is up and we see where the windows are and where downspouts are and we have to have it, even though you could say, okay, he's building it on the same footprint. I don't know where the roof overhangs are going to be, where windows are going to be, so we really couldn't plan on that. Plus the pole would still be there and in the way, and if trucks are going do that or excavators or some things, there's always a chance that it will hit a line, it will hit the pole, cause the pole to be knocked down. So by putting it across the street, for a safety issue, no one is hitting our pole, no one's hitting the wires. So that's why it would be across the street. And that's the location of where it is, depending on, it doesn't matter where on the front of we could hit a new service entrance, left or right, it doesn't matter, east-west, from that location. It's a lot easier to find it, or depending on what house is being built, that a window might be in a way, a chimney might be in a way, a roof overhang would be in a way, and so we wouldn't know until the whole building is up, and then we pick where the pole is. But from that pole 1, we have the whole frontage to hang a service wire. So I can't answer your question until I have a drawing of exactly what the front and first and second level is going to look like, where windows are going to be, where porches, stuff like that, roof overhangs.
Okay, and I don't want to take up too much. It just seems like the person that's going to be building that, I think, is going to know the answers to those questions. I mean, I think they know what they're going to build. So I don't want to beat a dead horse. So I'm probably going to be against the motion, just because I just don't believe National Grid has done enough work with the residents to try to find a suitable location. I can see why they want to put that pole where they want to because it makes the most sense for them. I understand why the applicant wants the pole moved, but as of right now, I just don't see that effort's been made to respond to some of the people that live on the street and their concerns to that proposed location.
Mr. Conley?
Mr. Chairman, I'd rather wait until the public hearing's closed and we're acting on a motion.
Sure. Have you gone to the planning board,
No.
building inspector?
Say that again?
The building inspector or planning board, have they taken this on yet, or where are we in the process?
I don't need to go to planning board because, pre-existing non-conforming, I can put up a single-family house.
Okay. Mr. Duffy? Who else hasn't talked? Thank you. Any other questions? All right, I'm going to close that portion of the public hearing. Thank you, gentlemen, and move on to the motion at hand.
Mr. Chairman, the motion was to approve the application.
The motion to approve. And seconded?
May I
Please.
just address a couple of points? Mr. Chairman, I took the time to go up and look at the locations, the proposed locations, and from my observations and looking at the plans, the proposed pole location does not make access any narrower or any tighter on that street. The pole, as it currently exists, is a zigzag pattern. The wires come diagonally across the street and then jog back the other way, and the relocation of the pole will make them in a straight line. According to National Grid, the relocation removes the requirement of having the guy lines on there. There's one that goes, from my observation, right to, at least to the applicant's property line. The pole is within 3 feet of his building or his proposed building. There's no way around that. He has to put whatever he's going to build on the same footprint, and the pole is right. You could reach out a window if there were a window and touch the pole. The proposed relocation is, again, both poles are in right-of-way property. And National Grid even proposed moving it towards Greeley Street, I believe, to bring it further away from the driveway that it would be near, but it certainly doesn't limit access to that driveway, even if it were to go in the proposed location. My observation is that pole seriously compromises or makes it unreasonable for the applicant to build the building that he's allowed to build on that property. And it does not come the proposed new location isn't anywhere near anyone's property, physical property. It's nowhere near a house or a garage or a barn, and it does not impede access to the driveway that's there. And actually, while I was up there, the son of the neighbor whose property I believe the new pole would be in front of told me that he had no concerns or issues and thinks it's a reasonable idea. So that's what I have to say in favor of the motion.
Thank you. Mr. Kovas?
So, based upon this discussion taking place at an informal meeting, number one. Number two, there doesn't seem to be anything that, in my opinion, is definitive from either the, from the Zoning Board of Appeals. And I think, to Mr. Deval's point about looking to find a compromise in exhaustive solutions before we just move to that point. The pole was there when the building was bought, and until there's no permits that have been pulled. So I would think at the very least, tabling the motion until we can get that, especially if it has to go to the planning board. I don't, we don't have, I feel like this whole thing is incomplete.
Then a motion?
Well, he has a motion on.
Can he, so we'll vote yours down and table it, or vote?
Yeah.
You call, I made the motion, it was seconded. If we're prepared to vote on the motion as presented, or amend the motion.
All right, well, yep, we'll vote. Any other comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
No. The motion fails 3-2. Thank you. Moving on, Casey Blackman and Chris Brown here to discuss a host community agreement for marijuana cultivation and manufacturing at 75 Green Street. Welcome.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, thank you for having us here today. My name is Chris Brown, and I'm joined by my friend and colleague, Russell Plum.
Welcome. What can we do for you?
We have made an application to begin the process of starting a host community agreement with the town of Clinton. We are currently in finalizing our lease negotiations at 75 Green Street, and we expect it to be completing shortly and would like to begin on the licensing process with both the town and the state.
Great. Just for people working at home or watching at home, we have another applicant at 75 Green Street. You'd be on different floors?
Correct.
Okay. Which floors?
They will be on the top 2 floors. We will occupy a portion of the first floor.
First floor. Great. Does anybody have any questions?
Just to clarify, just to make sure I got exactly what this is, this
Yeah.
is another applicant
Yes,
in the
for the
same
same
building?
building.
Same building?
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Any other questions or comments? What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we, has the host community proposal been reviewed with town council or anything like that?
No,
Well,
we'll-
I make a motion, we request town council and the town administrator to meet with the applicant to formalize a community host agreement.
I'll second that motion.
Motion made and seconded. Any questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0. So you'll meet with the town administrator and town council, and we'll go forward from there. But we wish you a lot of luck.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Duffy.
Good evening, members of the board. With your permission, I'll remove my mask.
Sure.
Just coming back on one new matter and one old matter. The old matter first, over the last 2 meetings, we've had agenda space to solicit any response or input from the board relative to expressions of interest that the town may submit prior to submitting a potential grant application to the new One Stop. 2 meetings ago, we went over what I proposed to be our 5 priorities, or up to 5 priorities. Just checking to see if anyone has any feedback, questions, or other ideas.
Mr. Chair? Forgive me, Phil, because I keep kind of forgetting what is applicable to this grant. But would signage downtown to guide people to parking lots and things of that nature be covered under this grant?
It could potentially.
Okay.
Although we did, the application we put in 2 weeks ago to the Shared Streets and Winter Spaces program, we put in for implementation of our wayfinding within the downtown construction area.
Okay.
So yes, it would, but we have also applied to another program for that same purpose.
Okay. All right.
Anybody else? Yeah, I mean, we've spoken informally. I think it's imperative that we use every means available to hit the ground running, both, post-COVID and post-downtown. So, I'm certainly in favor of all the things we have listed here. And whether this is the mechanism or there are others, we just have to continue to keep swinging at it, I guess.
Okay.
So, do you need any kind of official thing from us?
No, I don't think I need a motion. Sometime in April or May, if we decide to make an application to this program in June, I'll be coming before you to propose an application and to get your feedback.
Terrific.
And approval or denial.
Okay. And charging stations.
Yes, this is to raise a potential new project in the downtown. Grant funded again. Would be to utilize grants from Mass DEP and potentially National Grid to install level 2 charging stations for electric vehicles in the Walnut Street lot and in the Church Street lot. I've had some preliminary discussions with National Grid and with the manufacturer of one manufacturer of this equipment to understand how these are implemented, how they're paid for, how people pay for the electricity. There's some work to do. Particularly, National Grid has replenished their own grant program, but it would provide 100% of. It would be done with the only cost of the town being the cost of a software license, which range from different companies something between $200 and $300 a year. These would be again. This would provide for two charging stalls in each of the lots. By law, one would have to be a handicap stall as well. The electricity is paid for by consumers. The town sets the rate, and they pay through a software app, and then the town is reimbursed on a periodic basis. Really, the idea is that this is electric vehicles are increasing in popularity. Most people will do their charging at home overnight. These are level 2 chargers, so they typically charge, depending on the battery and the temperature, between 5 and 11 hours for a full charge. And 11 hours is when it's 0 degrees out. And this would provide the opportunity either to people who work in the downtown or to people who live in the downtown to catch a charge when they might forget or they might need a little topping off. So it would require that we dedicate 4 parking spaces, 2 in each lot, for 2 electric vehicles. And there's still a lot of engineering to be done. This wouldn't be implemented for many months, but just raising the idea to the board to see if you're receptive to following this, pursuing this, or not. So I guess that's the idea.
Please.
Forgive me if you mentioned this already. Does it require the person using the charging station to enter some sort of payment, or does the town pay for it?
It can be done anyway. I would imagine we would have people pay for their electricity, and we would pay. And I don't know that it would be worthwhile to charge a lot, but we should certainly charge enough, certainly, to cover the cost and the cost of software over time. But how it works is that I think ChargePoint is the largest vendor in the United States. EV car owners have an app. They pull up to the station. They enter it into the app. They end up paying ChargePoint, and ChargePoint reimburses the town. Different manufacturers reimburse on either monthly or quarterly bases, but that's how we would get paid. And we set the rate for the charge.
Are the 2 charge stations in town? Is that how? Do you have any familiarity with them? Is that?
I know where they're located, but I don't know how they're administered.
Okay.
Yeah, I know that one is at the Parks and Rec building and one is behind the elementary school.
Any other questions? I think it's a great idea. So, yeah, I'd love to hear more.
Okay. Anyone else?
Good.
Okay. Then I'll put some time into that, and
Terrific.
we'll get that implemented so long as it's at no cost to the town. And that's all I got tonight.
You're next on budget hearings. So.
Okay. Perfect.
Why don't you? Do we have paperwork on that?
Okay, should we talk budget?
Yeah, please.
Okay. You have before you, I believe, the summary sheet and miscellaneous expense breakdown for my proposed budget. My budget every year consists of only 2 lines. My salary, which is set by the personnel board and by personnel bylaw, and my miscellaneous expense line. It has been level funded in each of the 9 years I've been here. I use it for purposes you see. If I don't use it, I return it to the town, and I'm requesting that we level fund my budget.
Any questions? All right.
Great.
Pretty easy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Continuing with budget hearings for fiscal 22, Mr. Baird, Assessing Department. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. Essentially, there were 4 changes on our budget, which generally we're pretty much level funded, but this year, if you look at our summary worksheet, there were 4 changes, starting with the LTE wireless service. So what that is, we've increased our access points on 2 iPads that allow us to go out and do assessing in the field, and we can download the data and take it with us, and we're able to much more efficiently actually do appraisal, and we're still learning how to use them and we're getting adjusted to them, but we're fortunate enough to apply for those under the COVID grants to help us stay out of the office, and those are great. So those are good, but we do need to keep those LTE services running so the iPads continue to run. So that's the first increase. The second increase is cloud hosting, which allows everyone to go online and access the data that we have in our office, and that's just a marginal increase from the previous year. Skipping down one to maintenance agreements, once again, just a marginal increase. That's Vision, which is a software vendor we use to do the assessing. That's just a standard increase that occurs every year. The big increase here, which is $7,000 for contract services, we have 3 public utilities. They're considered Class 504 utilities. And through some decisions that have occurred through the Appellate Tax Board and other court systems, the DOR has determined a new way of valuing those. So normally you value personal property with the cost less depreciation. Pretty straightforward. We do that here. This is a new thing called a blended method. So what they're doing is utilizing that standard process in conjunction with the sales analysis of utilities throughout the country. So that data is pretty closely held, and there are only 2 companies in Massachusetts that actually have the ability to develop this value. So we have to contract with one of them. The problem is if we don't, the DOR is threatening no certification for values. So we're kind of bound to do it. It disturbs me a bit because I think it's treating them differently than it treats everyone else, and I see it as another class, but that's not how the DOR sees it, and apparently that's not how the court system sees it, so we're going to have to go along with that. And so that's really the major increase here in our budget, is that $7,000. Other than that, it's level funded in all the other categories.
Any questions from the board? Thank you.
Thank you.
The Veterans Service Department and Fire Department had unexpected conflicts tonight, so we've rescheduled them. Town Solicitor budget.
Thanks, Mike. Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you probably said, my budget, when I went before the Finance Committee, it's essentially the same as last year. It's pretty straightforward. It's only a 2-line item budget. Solicitor salary, $5,000, and then the solicitor litigation, legal memos, $107,200. That second line covers, all the day-to-day legal advice, the union negotiations. It also covers, all litigation. In my tenure as town council, we've been pretty lucky litigation-wise. We have not had any significant litigations. Right now, I've got maybe a planning board matter. I've got a new Board of Health matter. Working with Dave Baird on a appellate tax board matter. But those are all smaller litigations that easily can be handled within this budget. If we were ever to get a large-scale litigation, we might have some problems. But but knock on wood, we have not had that in quite some time. So. This budget's been pretty consistent over the last several years. Some years we're under, some years we're a little bit over. But I think for fiscal year 22, the $112,000 should be adequate. And just so everyone knows, on that second line item, the bulk of the budget, everyone in my office who works, like Nick Anassopoulos, who does the union negotiations, everyone tracks their time on a 6/10 of an hour. So we track all those hours that are spent here that make up this budget. So if I want to go back and look at how much time was spent on negotiations, how much time was spent on day-to-day advice, that's all billed. Those bills go out monthly to the town administrator for approval by the town. So it's not just a lump sum number that we just have added. We track all those expenditures right down to every 6 minutes. So I don't know if anyone has any questions.
Any questions? I think we're good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Michael, you've got the first pass at a bigger budget, or an update on where we are, big picture?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just passed out tonight to the board. The board had asked at the last meeting just to kind of get
preliminary status as to where we stand with the budget submitted. So I did pass out a document that shows the budget requests and kind of the updated revenues and our debt exclusion numbers, all updated as to where we stand right now. Now, these are certainly preliminary estimates, and they will change and be tweaked and kind of a fluid process as we go through the budget cycle, but at least it gives a starting point for the board to look at. Right now, it's saying we're 327,000 in deficit, but again, I think these are requested budgets, so there's certainly some work we could do to pare some of that back, and as the state legislature goes through their process, we'll get better numbers on state aid, and we'll get better numbers from the assessor's office on new growth figures and different revenues like that. So this is just where we're starting out from. Two things I'd like to note that aren't in this budget. We are starting. I've reached out to the Clinton Police Union has reached out to me. They have new leadership on the police union, so they are looking to now catch up on their union collective bargaining agreement, their union contract. So if we can get something done by town meeting, that number will be needed to be added to this budget, which would be last year, and then compounded for this year as well too, the impact on this budget. And the other is this week on Monday, as the board met tonight at the beginning of the meeting, Brian Farragher, Mr. Farragher, look forward to working with him, and he just started, so we're going to be sitting down, going through the budget. Dr. Meyer, the school side, offered to be involved as well too, and we kind of want to take an organizational look at that department and the needs of that department. There was some temporary help that was hired by the previous director for the COVID cleaning in the schools. Dr. Meyer thinks that in the foreseeable future that's going to be needed. So they're, in conjunction with the new director, I think we may be looking to make some proposals in that facilities budget as well too, which will probably increase that deficit a little bit more. But again, it's our starting point, and now we have April and May to really tweak it and get to where we need to be for a town meeting. So.
Any questions from the board?
Mr. Chairman, a couple of things I'd just like to bring up that we should be looking to accomplish sooner rather than later is traditionally we vote to recommend a COLA increase for non-union personnel board employees, and we should do that sooner rather than later and make sure those numbers are reflected in our budget projections. We don't want to be trying to squeeze it in at the end, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
That's a good point, because there are some budgets where they're still on the grid that they would at least have moved up their step, but then the COLA is not impacted, and then a number of employees are at max, so they have no COLA at all. Some departments will then make an assumption, others will leave it level funded. So as Mr. Conley indicated, yeah, it would be good to have that direction so those numbers could be locked in, and then we know where we're going from there. Yeah.
And I'd suggest that we vote that at the next meeting, so that those numbers can.
Was that it?
No, the other part of this was I would like to, during the budget process, look closely at what we're doing for capital improvements, town-wide, but specifically Matt and I have been working with the Parks and Recreation Commission, Fuller Field Commission. And Matt's done a pretty good job of giving them the information about where that facility was headed, and I'd like to see that we include some of that. I did scan through the Parks and Rec budget, and they're recommending a warrant article for the upgrade. Two things: I'd like to make sure that we are requesting the right amount of money for that. That it's not just a random number, and I don't see why it couldn't be included in the facility department's budget as opposed to a warrant article. Right. As a basic capital improvement that the facility department's responsible for getting done.
Right. And you're right, there will be, the board's going to talk about the warrant process tonight to open up the warrant, so there will be a lot of requests coming in that way as well, too. We don't have our year-end close number from last year, so there might be some one-time monies that could be used for some of those capital items, so that can help there. But I feel, badly for the facility director, because now he has a short window to really try to get in his requests that he's going to have to live with for the whole next fiscal year. So we'll, work hard on it and be working together in the next couple weeks so that we have something good to live with for July 1.
Mr. Chair? Yes. The previous facilities director, though, had a plan, right? I mean, it's not like Brian's going to be going into this blind. He'll have something to work from, right?
Absolutely, yep, okay. Absolutely. There were some priorities that were outlined, and we do have that, so it's just a matter of trying to refresh those and see which ones should be done or can wait, and what can be afforded, and we don't have to, don't have to start from ground one, But it's just it's really just the organizational assessment. I think he really wanted to come in and do a capabilities assessment, an organizational assessment, and a capital needs assessment, which is, is going to take time, as well as getting up to speed on our procedures, our funding, all his staff. So it's just, the time of the year, it's just a busy time of the year to try to do all that at the same time. So, but we'll work, like I say, work together and get there to where we need to be. Yep. So, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you. Moving on, there's no administrative business tonight. Old and new business. Liberty Compassion, Inc. has sent notice to the Board of Selectmen that they have applied to the Cannabis Control Commission for the change of control and ownership of their cannabis business located at 179 Brook Street in Clinton. There's a letter in the packet. Any background on this?
Well, I think, Mr. Chair, and certainly be welcome any input from the solicitor, but I think they've just put notice that they've applied to the Cannabis Control Commission. But certainly the town of Clinton has a huge stake in that as well, too, because the town has an HCA with the Board of Selectmen for impact fees that are going to be paid to the town. So I don't know if we would maybe want to make a suggestion that they come before the board and at least give the board kind of an outlook as to what they're looking to do, and who the new people are, and just to reinforce that we do have this commitment that they need to honor.
Yeah, I mean, how does that?
And I don't know legally if we have to amend it or how those documents work. So.
Yeah, I mean, I would concur with the town administrator's recommendation. I think they should come before the board. We do have the host community agreement with the prior entity. Even if the state does approve this, you'd like to assume that the host community agreement's getting automatically assigned to the new company, but we don't know that. I think we need to have them come before the board and make it clear that, that they're going to have to adhere to the requirements of that HCA. And after they come before the board, then I think, I'd be inclined to even amend the HCA to have it reflect the new entity, because they're we want them to be obligated to pay the percentages that they're required to pay under that HCA.
And especially, Mr. Chair, if I may, especially with this company, because they were the first one. So they were, the town of Clinton and the Board of Selectmen had an agreement with this company prior to the Cannabis Control Commission coming into existence, and prior to the CCC giving regulations. So right now, as we, myself and solicitor had a brief comment with these new applicants that were before the board tonight, and indicating that it's pretty much a template agreement that we have, that we've been using with the last several companies. But this one here is unique. It was only definitely a lot of specifics just to this company. So I think, like Mr. Gibbons said, I think these new owners are going to have to be aware of what they're signing up for.
Well, would it be which agreement's better for us? The new one we're doing, or the old one? I mean,
I'd have to take a look at the old one. I would. We could probably improve upon that, because I think we may have increased some of the percentages as we moved along, and then once we moved into the second and third, now they've all pretty much been they're pretty much mirrors of each other. I'd have to go back and look at, like Mr. Ward said, that was our first one.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we'd have to look at, I don't know what precedent exists, like how often this happens, and it certainly hasn't happened here, but Yeah, we have to just make sure that our best interests are protected, so I'll follow your lead on this. If you want to get them in here at the earliest convenience, that'd be great.
Yeah, if the board's so inclined, I mean, I have no problem they're represented by, what is it?
To their attorney.
Yeah, is it Attorney O'Neill?
Yep.
Yeah, I have no problem reaching out to Attorney O'Neill and, you know, and we can set up a time, coordinate with the town administrator and a time when they can come
Great.
before the board.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I have a question. To date, we haven't got $1 from them, correct?
No.
No, this would be the company, this is the entity that we would get our first, ultimately would get our first.
Yeah, they started before I was on the board, so, I mean, Tyka's technically next, but I don't know where they are, so.
I believe is on hold, blah, 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 but they should be, I know they're sending product out already, so.
Yeah, the way the host community, this one include, the way they're written, the first payment is I think it's 14 months in, so the company has to be running for 14 months before we would get the first payment.
How will that affect, like this company, let's say they're like a year, 12 months into it, right? They'll be gone. So this new company start a new clock?
No, that's something we're gonna have to
sort that out.
whatever's been shipped to date, this new company's they're gonna have to do that as part of their assets purchase agreement, because we're entitled to the
We should
sales
be getting
from,
a
from
check
day
as
one.
well.
That's the issue.
Yeah, because this company had indicated to me when I spoke with them a few weeks back that in October 20 is when they started sales. They had been doing a lot of growing, but they were still waiting for approvals to make sales. So October 2020 was the first time that they had done anything that would affect our HCA. So as Mr. Busno said, you know, we have to wait for that payment to come, but we're not going to forget that, you know, we still have that period, that 6-month period from when they, you know, when the old previous company owes us. So.
Make sure this new company honors the original agreement.
Right.
Yeah.
They don't get an extra year and a half not paying.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know how long the process is gonna take with the state, because the state obviously has to approve it too. I mean, you know, the change of this entity, so it's not like it's changed. So we've got plenty of time.
Okay. Yeah, let's get them in. Any other questions on that one?
Thank you.
Moving on, we need to hold a special town meeting relative to the landfill capping project. Mr. Ward?
Yes, I think, Mr. Chair, just talking with the board talked, I think, last meeting, and then talking with the Superintendent of Public Works, I think it is something that we would like to move forward with. Special town meeting requires a 2-week advertising opposed to 1 week for annual town meeting. So we would need that Tuesday prior to Friday item to get the notice to the paper, and then it would have to run 2 weeks before the following Monday that we would have, normally would have a town meeting. So I think the earliest, if the board was inclined to open and close the warrant tonight with one issue town meeting, then I think the earliest we could do would be, I think it was April 5th, I think, April 12th, I think we were looking at the calendar for April 12th. However, in our discussions, we were maybe thinking it might be best to push that 1 more week out to April 19th, but then April 19th is a holiday, so we would have to go to the next day, April 20th. So if that's something that would work for the board, that was kind of internally what we were discussing as a proposal.
And do we need language for that article, or we can just talk about it in general? How does that work?
Yeah, the article is going to have to do obviously with an eminent domain take. I mean, you know, it'd be like Mr. Ward said, it'd just be a one article, you know, authorizing, you know, the Board of Selectmen, giving the Board of Selectmen the authority to move forward with an eminent domain take. The warrant article is not completely, I have a draft of it, but it's not finalized.
But do we need that for the advertisement?
Yes, you need a warrant article.
Yeah, we would definitely need an article to put in the paper, but
Right.
would the board need to review?
No, I don't think the board necessarily needs to review the article right now. I mean, as long as the board approves it, it's only going to be one article on that, for that special town meeting, and give, you know, the town administrator and the town council the authority to move forward with getting that set up. I think that's all we need tonight.
Yeah, if the board would set a motion for the intent of the article, subject to language drafted by town council.
Mr. Chair?
What's the pleasure? Yep.
You had mentioned a holiday on April 12th?
No, the 19th is Patriots Day. We wanted, the 12th was the original day. We met with the DPW superintendent who suggested we bake another week in there just to give us some time to work on things. That would take us to the 19th, which is Patriots' Day, so we're moving it to the 20th since we meet on the 21st.
Okay.
If that works for everybody. Any other questions?
Just a couple comments. I want to make sure that we update the town moderator as soon as possible, and that we, I don't recall what the guidelines were for utilizing the COVID quorums for special and annual town meeting. Do we have to have a public hearing for that?
We were still under it.
I believe we're still under the...
Approve the COVID. COVID.
We're still under the
I
emergency.
thought we had to do
Yeah,
some...
we're still under that same
Oh, yes.
emergency order, so yeah, that's a
Yeah,
good point. I'll have to look at that.
They still apply, but we need to, I thought we needed to have a public hearing or a vote by the board after a certain amount of advertising
At their, you're talking about for the reduced amount?
to reduce the
Yeah,
quorum.
I think you're correct. I'll have to look at that.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I make a motion that we schedule a special town meeting for April 20th at 7 PM for the purpose of considering an article to be drafted by town council for easement or a taking, an eminent domain taking of a parcel of land that's needed for the landfill closure.
I'll second that motion.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
I also would like to make a motion that the chair or the town administrator schedule the hearing that I think is required for the COVID quorum as quickly as possible.
Second that motion.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Moving on to the annual town meeting. We need to set up our timeline for the annual town meeting, which is a little later this year because of this.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
do we need to have a motion to open and close the warrant for the special town meeting?
Yeah, probably should. It's just the one article. You already just, you could take that your last vote was only going to be a single article.
Okay.
Special town meeting. I think that meets the intent.
Okay.
Annual, we need to set the calendar for that? Where are we there?
Right, just a matter of how long the board just wanted to open up the warrant for submittals. We did get, through budget submittals, we did get quite a few from departments, but certainly I would formally notify them that we're now accepting articles, and also to notify the public. We have had one citizen petition so far, but certainly want to make that public so that the public, they know this is at one time a year to get those in. So I think in the past, we've done 4 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, somewhere in that time frame, I think is plenty. So.
All right, today's the 17th.
You could say that the April 17th board meeting would have a draft warrant for the board to review at that April 17th meeting.
Will we go the 7th and the 21st? Am I looking at the right one?
That's what I got, April 7th and 21st.
Yeah.
Oh, my opposite, 21st, sorry, yep.
So the 21st?
Right, 21st, yep.
All right. Those articles, do we need a motion on that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I
Just
move...
like as Mr. Conley said, a motion to open up the warrant with deadline of articles to be submitted to the board for their April 21st meeting.
That's the motion, Mr. Chairman, but the deadline for submission would be the 20th.
20th, thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all's in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0. So we're good on that. You want to go on this matter? We're going to...
Yeah, that's fine.
Bylaw Review
Just
Committee.
briefly. I would just request consideration for a bylaw review committee. On the snow removal subcommittee, we've talked about how the bylaws are, kind of, they're in need of some updating in that area, and just taking the opportunity to kind of go through and look at others
that may be in need of updating to, for current times.
Can the town solicitor shed any light on this? Is this a difficult thing, or what do you think the scope of this should be, or do you have any advice? When's the last time have we done this recently?
No.
Okay.
I mean, I think it's a good idea to, and I think obviously the town clerk should be involved. I mean, she's the keeper of the bylaws, but I think it would be worth going through and just taking a look at all the bylaws and making recommendations to the full board on ones that maybe are obsolete. There are a lot of them that are obsolete, or maybe just need to have some formatting type revision. Obviously, if there's going to be substantive changes, we have to take those. Those would take a lot more detail and have to get a lot more input. But I think just an initial review of, especially some of the obsolete ones, makes sense.
As far as membership, so, I mean, I guess I'd appoint this one. Does the board have to approve this, or can I just create and appoint it? A subcommittee.
I'd submit that the board would need to approve creating the bylaw
and then I fill it.
review subcommittee, and the chair makes the appointments.
What's the pleasure of the board on this?
Chairman, I make a motion that we create a bylaw review committee and authorize the chairman to make appointments.
Second that motion.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Great. Matt, we can connect offline and talk about membership. Thanks for coming up with that.
He'll regret it.
I forgot how many I'm on, so.
Up in the water's fine.
The horse and buggies being tied up around.
And, yeah, right, yeah, that's a $5 fine, I think. Human Resources Director has asked that we advertise for a vacancy on the Personnel Board. Mr. Ward has also provided us with some openings on other boards. I know that recruitment is always a challenge, but if the board is okay with it, we can advertise these.
Sure, Mr. Chairman. I think maybe to get some publicity on cable from the board members that we are looking for some volunteers. The Personnel Board position has been open for a while now. So certainly if somebody wants to get involved to be on a citizen to be on that committee, we would welcome that. But it's about once a year, about this time of year. We try to do a notice in the paper anyways. So that's why I just kind of gave to the board that there are some other positions that are open as well too. So we certainly can put an ad in the paper and re-energize our link on our website. I think it has expired. So anything that we have on there, that it will just be up there. And I know Mr. Kobus had mentioned to me earlier as well too, and maybe something we could keep continually up there so people know, they can go on at any time and see what openings or availability or involvement that the townspeople can get with the town. And that way, because sometimes even during the year, things might open up. So as long as it's there all the time, I think it's a good idea to let people know. So anyone that's looking to get involved in the town, we do have some boards and committees, and primarily personnel, but there are some other cultural council, disability, alternate on the zoning board. So certainly we're always looking for volunteers, so thank you.
Great. Moving on, any other old and new business?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, just briefly, at the last meeting, I told you guys that we had met with the town administrator, and we went through the evaluation process, and we came up with some proposed solutions that wanted to share with the board. So I sent an email out recently. I just want to briefly go through those recommendations, and then we can take the 2 weeks. Everyone can, think about them, and then maybe we'll put it on the agenda at the next meeting if we want to have a more in-depth discussion. But the recommendations coming out of the evaluation subcommittee were for us to look into a assistant town administrator, to look into a townwide electronic time clock system, and we were very vague about that. Details of our expectations and needs for that can be dealt with, but in general, all parties agreed that some sort of an electronic time clock system would be beneficial. Creation and maintenance of a master list of tasks broken up by priority and short, medium, and long term. So that's something we had discussed months ago. I brought to the board like a template of it, and it's just something I think we want to take a look at creating, so we can have one main location for all of our action items, just to make sure that we don't miss anything, and also to make sure that we don't overburden the town administrator with too many tasks, because I think sometimes if there's just people asking him, 5 people coming up with 5 different requests, if we can have it all in one location, I think it'll be obvious to see, we'll have some information that we can say, nice idea, but hold off for a little bit because we're kind of at capacity right now. The other one was a organizational initiative. We just talked about exploring some new technologies and softwares to better streamline information and paperwork. We also discussed some sort of a town resource to better guide citizens through various town approval processes. If you recall, this is something that we already looked into maybe about a year and a half ago. It was a pilot program I think Mike had talked about to the board. It was a kind of like interactive software that the user could pick from a drop-down menu what they are trying to get approval for, and then could get guidance on like what board to go to first for approval before moving to another board. That's just been noted as kind of a comment of confusion sometimes to people trying to navigate through the process at the town hall. So we thought that would be something that would be beneficial. And last was just and I can talk with Alexis on this further, some type of a town-wide IT survey for the town information technology services. That was, if you recall in the evaluation, that was kind of left as an unknown until we could gather more information. So that would be a follow-up on that. So those are it's 6 total of recommendations that came out of that evaluation, and they were shared over email with everyone. But like I said, I just wanted to briefly mention them today, get them on the radar. I don't expect anyone to, I'm certainly open to discussing them now if anyone wants to, but I think it probably would be best to give everyone some time to think about them, ask either me or Matt or Mike if you have any questions about what those really are, and then we can put it on the agenda for next meeting. And if we want to have a more in-depth discussion on any of those, we can do it at that time.
2 quick questions. One, I thought, was that the permitting thing, Michael? Was that our community compact? One of our.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
Was that one of our goals with the Lieutenant Governor's community compact, or was that? Am I thinking something through Phil? The permitting guide. Was it you and us, or?
Yes, that was something that Mr. Duffy is working on. Okay. That we did have a community compact grant, and there was a consultant in the Collins Center had put together a draft. So they had recently provided him. I know with COVID it kind of got delayed, but they had recently provided him kind of a draft for a comment. So I think he's reviewing it now for comment, and then go back to them and finalize it. So hopefully that should be something that we would have in the near future.
Great, thank you. And the only other thing, everything seems fine here. Can you just help me connect the dots between Michael's evaluation and town-wide time card system? How do those? I don't know how that. It seems a little out of place.
Yeah, during the it was a complaint, or there was several complaints, but they weren't really vetted properly, and we discussed them with Michael during the evaluation, and he was certainly interested in learning more if there were complaints about the IT services, but he felt that the current services that we have right now are adequate. So one of the things we just discussed, if there is some sort of a difference of opinion, maybe the best way to do it is just do some sort of a survey of.
Sorry, I meant the time card.
Oh, the time card. I thought you said the IT survey. That was one of during the evaluations. There was just not concerns, but there was. I don't even know if I want to use.
Feedback had been received about the availability within certain departments at certain times of the week
Yes.
as being unavailable.
Specifically, like some of the service departments, there were anonymous complaints about availability when offices were supposed to be open, that they may have been closed early, and there was really no way of knowing if there was any credence to those. So that's how it started. We had brought that up to Mike, but then Mike had mentioned that in general, that there's a need to move to more of an electronic data capturing system, because right now, all the different departments are just submitting their hours manually and keeping track of all that stuff separately. And he felt, especially with the new human resources, some extra resources on board, that it might be time to try to centralize a lot of that information and that data. So in light of both of those things, we felt that it made sense to take a look at pursuing some sort of a electronic time capture system to meet both of those needs.
Mr. Chair, if I may, and it's just a modernization of a process that currently exists within the town. So to Mr. Devault's point, when we looked at Munis and the current payroll vendor, there's a lot of paper base that has to be inputted, whereas this would kind of encompass all of that, and it would become it would just be a more efficient process than what currently exists.
Okay. Yeah, we can, I'll put this on the next agenda.
Sure.
Any other questions while we're at it? Okay. Old and new business? Committee reports.
One last
Oh,
thing,
sorry,
old
yep.
new business, Mr. Chairman. May be too early, but I think it's an obligation we have is to be a pest about this, and I'd like to request an update from either, even by email, from our state rep and state senators on our long outstanding home rule petitions.
Gladly.
And something specific rather than we're working on it kind of thing.
Thank you. Anything else? Committee reports. The Cable Committee is going to be scheduling some meetings. Our new director starts on Monday, so our hope is to set some expectations and hit the ground running there pretty quickly. Any other committee reports? Any other business at all? Hearing none, we'll be adjourning to executive session under Article 3. We will not be returning to open session to do any business. I'm going to take a roll call. Mr. DeVoe?
Ed DeVault, aye.
Mr. Connolly?
Aye.
Mr. Kobus?
Aye.
Mr. Busno?
Aye.
And the chair is aye. Again, we will not be returning to open session. Our next meeting is April, gosh darn it. What is it, 3rd? 7th. April 7th. Thank you and good night.